All right. So I think the last thing I was thinking about getting into is maybe doing the display names for the Magic ID system. Seems like the next most reasonable step. Since I was already touching the ID system and I'm in there, let's fold that work into this step as well. I could make it default behavior of the ID system itself to always um, provide display names as metadata. But I think an easier way to do it is just to practice putting it in manually. So the way that would work, for instance, is with the events. Instead of using U8s, I would use string 8s, and I would go like this. And that doesn't change anything about how it works. Haven't done the rule script registry thing yet. We could also visit that in the brain system and try to finish up removing the registry. But finishing this up, these don't even want display names. Yeah. So I think that should have changed nothing, but I could now I can say something like, what if I want to get the name for a state? So right now when it goes, it prints state 3.3. What if I just say these need to be strings now. How does it work? Somehow I have to get this can be RPG state enum.bias, which is the wrong name, casted to a string 8 pointer from int string 8 RPG state name from state ID, something like this. There we go. It's cool, but it's wrong because I didn't add in the ID yet. Cool, but a bit annoying that I have to type that all out myself and that the names are a little weird. I want to throw out a proposal that I don't need. Well, the advantage to doing it this way is that it avoids using a name bundling trick that you expose to the user. I think once I go to edit the object file, as a part of this process, that it'll make more sense to have the count and the bias be symbols that get generated. Now, this isn't directly seen by anybody, so we could change it. It doesn't have to be an ID enum. It could just be stamped out here by ID def, so it's not exposed to a user. It would go comp time U64 ID enum name count equals 0, and then it would be the type ID enum name pointer base. So this is OPL minus first divided by that. That gives me, right, so this would become like this. We get rid of this. Define ID count. That's glue ID enum name that's glue e underscore count, and ID base footer, and then these are called like this now, ID enum name, ID base footer, and right here we access them through those macros. There and there. We're not going to cast it to an int. We're just going to cast it to its type. ID enum name pointer range dot first. So that just goes there. If we do things that way, a little bit of the code's going to break, but what? Right. So raw is an integer that we get by taking that pointer, huh? And then there's no such thing as e.bias anymore, but really what's going on here is we're taking int from putter on the ID base putter of e. Base putter into an integer, raw as an integer, subtract, divide, increment by 1. This one is ID count RPG tile enum ID base putter RPG tile enum same thing again with the protos. again with the brain tile enums. So then this can be ID metadata from ID, RPG state enum, that's all of this. Going back here, ID metadata from ID, EID, metadata from ID is like ID type E star no. What we have to do is ID base putter E plus ID minus 1. That's what you have to do. If we want to, we can also throw in a cool one here. ID metadata EN is just directly referencing the global variable like this without making it a raw integer. Metadata from ID needs to be spelled correctly. And there we go. Combat round, fight, fight. Combat round, fight, fight. Combat round, fight, fight. I think I want 2 new lines after each state. You know? Oh, no, not there. I want it, in the closing, though. Yeah, like right here. Maybe even after the indent, you know? Like that. So it's just an empty line between each one. So I can walk through the states by going to... Probably that's why I'm intuitively feeling that that's a good idea. Okay, so that means we have the ability to just attach names so easy now to these kinds of enums. You just say that if nothing else, you just throw a string type in as the array the metadata type, and then you just take the symbol name and stringize it and save that, right? So these just auto-generate these once you've wrapped them in a macro like this. Now, do I like having this way? Not particularly. It's probably more like RPG name from state ID that I want. So it would be like metadata from ID, state enum, ID. Cool. All right. I'm gonna have to take a quick pause. Be right back. Okay. Thanks for your patience. And back to thinking about this. So that's how I'm doing display names. I like it. It does raise some curious questions. Like, these are string pointers and sizes. And where does the text go, right? It doesn't go in the same section as the actual string 8 struct, which is good, because if it did go in the same section, then none of this would work. I would have to separately define the string somewhere in the main data section and then link it in. But But even though it works, it would be kind of cool if I could find a way to store all the strings in a string section and then have the actual metadata be like 32-bit offset and a 32-bit size, because that would be able to cut down those sizes of these in half. And I don't know, it'd be kind of cool to be able to do all my string interning manually and spit out the right data section, but I'm gonna need more object file powers than I have right now, because I can't do much to convince C to compile. In such a way that it would do the string layout for me. So yeah, that's gonna have to be good enough for a while. Seems good. Okay, I think we do the tile scripting next. So, do I have an example in this file? Yes, heart. So what I want to do is begin transitioning to a new kind of tile script system. So I think the first thing to do is to just say, if you have a macro that says tile script, you got to go inside some if zeros now. We'll be coming through and replacing you with the new thing very soon. Just wake up, protect, protected. Brain script is fine. Brain scripts aren't going to work either when the tiles that go with them stop existing. So we'll just take those offline too. Okay. Well, let's start with speed. Since that's the one blocker. Ugh. Wait, what if I put in a T and then a void here? That should work, right? Then I can do hook signature, void, perfect. Except for the tile script, we're actually gonna type it up. Cool. That's a good chunk out. I think that's all the stuff I needed to get rid of the tile headers, which is cool. Okay. The flim flam is gone. And that's it. That's how we define the speed tile. Let's get through a few other basic tiles real quick. So action and quick action are similarly just as easy. Let's see. I guess I'll say speed is done. Quick action, max 99, hidden true. Drop the word quick. Now, before I go ahead and do something like this heart one here, I actually want to have a talk about the decision about how I was going to classify events of tiles decrementing. So maybe we go and address that first. Okay, so we don't need tile headers. We still need tile probes. We still need gather moves. We still need this used, but here we go. Okay. So, focusing on this increment decrement stuff, here's where it gets weird. What is the scope gonna be for this, right? So originally I was saying that each tile would hook the event of it itself getting incremented or decremented, and that if other things wanted to see that, it would then rebroadcast that as an event on a larger scope. So it could say, hey, whenever I get incremented, broadcast on my holder an event of me getting incremented that is a different name. We're going to pipe this through a separate event type. And so you couldn't hook when a holder tile would increment separately from something that, like as an event of its own. You would have to go and modify the tile you wanted to hook so that it exported a unique event that it could broadcast to you, right? And I think I want to do it the other way around now. I think I want to be able to say something like, instead of the heart having to say when this gets decremented, I want to see what it'll feel like if instead protect is the one. Yeah, and that kind of protected. So when we take damage, it comes in as a variable on that event. I'm going to want to say something like this. When it be, let's take a look at what this will look like. When I go RPG tile script, protected, it's going to have a max of 1, and it's going to discard at 0. So that's this information handled. And then it's going to have some events that I need to deal with too. Script event. On the protected tile, when we get a holder rests event, I'm going to want to say RPG discard this, right? And I'm going to want to say, not when the holder is damaged, but when the holder is decremented on their tile heart, right? Then that's when this information is handled. That's when this will come in. And damage amount is really just a rename of in1 for that hook. But you see the issue I'm seeing? This can't really be an event like this because this and this don't have the same signature, so to speak, right? This here is telling us that the holder is resting. This here is telling us that the heart tile got decremented on the holder, but it takes 2 pieces of information to build that event, not 1. So what kind of a thing is an event if it can sometimes be an ID of its own, and sometimes it is an ID paired with another ID of another kind? I mean, I can tell you what kind of a thing it is from a certain perspective I have. It's a call for a better finite state programming than what I've got. Right now I can generate finite sets by declaring things into them like these tile scripts and the brains and so on, and I can attach things onto what I've declared. But I cannot generate ID spaces that are compound. As in, I can't say something like the holder decrement event comes with a parameter of a tile, right? I can't say that. All right. There's no way to make this event be parameterized on the set of tiles that I have in my current system, so that this represents the second piece of the information to form an event handle, right? That's kind of how it simplifies down right now. So some alternatives are, we could say all events have one secondary ID parameter and just some of them don't use it. But the problem with that is now I need to know which kind of ID I'm getting, because if some of these are parameterized on tiles and some of them are parameterized on states or something else, then I don't know how to decode this ID. If I just say, hey, it's an event, it gets broadcasted to the character, all the events on all the tiles on this character process their holder decrement event, no matter which tile got decremented. And it's just a matter of going like, okay, so the input here isn't just going to be a damage amount. It's going to have to be like a tile change or something, right? And so in one's like a struct, and you're going to go like tile change damage amount is greater than 0, then do some modifications. But also, before we do any of that, we also want to make sure that tile change ID is damage amount would become amount, and then ID would be RPG tile heart. So now anytime you have a protected tile on you, if any tile gets decremented, we have to run this function. Just in case this function can do something at that point. Right? See how that could work, but it kind of sucks? So another way I can do it is these don't need to be events. Events might not be a useful concept after all. And instead what might be happening here is more like a special holder decrement, and then we put down the fact that we're talking about the heart tile there, and then we're looking at damage amount equals in 1. And that's fine. That works, except that it means that any of these compound things, any of these compound clauses involve building out new bindings, right? Every time I make a new macro, like if tile script and then tile script event and then tile script holder decrement and then tile script holder increment, each of these is going to have to be another one of these kinds of things. The first one defines the tile itself. The rest will create these hooks and tie the tile name together with some new metadata to another hook, and then they have to get pre-processed, right? So each of these that I increment is one of these things to manage. Plus, don't forget, it's also one of these kinds of things, right? Like the brain tile enum situation. So none of these are quite making me thrilled. I'd love to be able to figure out a way to just say an event is an event, or even better yet, it's not just about events. It's more about, like, we call it an event when we gather moves, right? But they're kind of more like tile script clauses. And so maybe this is a clause. Basically what I want is I've got right, and then there's these issues of, oh, I was thinking of changing up how targeting works soon too in some of these, and the conditions and stuff. to take that on right now. That feels like an extra problem. Plus, this is like a totally made up and not yet understood issue. I think what I was thinking here is that this might stand in place of the state check that was happening here and here. Because I don't want to end up in a spot where I have to do a clause header twice and a big block of code that wants to be shared by them and it get all complicated. If I did, though, if we just said this was a little off, forget this idea, I'm going to do run, and then the event is this used, but also we want to throw in the state flee and the state chase. I'm going to have each of them just be equivalent to this would be the part that would look kind of like this. Somehow we get the chase context. I don't know. They each just go run use context. Run use context. Okay, so that could do the trick. It's a little bit annoying, but I guess I can live with that as a step. You can imagine some other ways I might like this to go, like if I were able to do this, and then I could go like hook signature, RPG run use, void, and then set these equal to RPG run use directly like this somehow, instead of having to define them with a block. Later, Maria. So I could imagine there's a way to do something like that, possibly. Because it's just a matter of figuring out how to put the thing in, how to put the name in on that struct eventually in a clever way. Like, it would just be a matter of saying, once this is reusable, with the body here, you would just go or like whatever, you know, you'd put in a modified version of the macro for setting a clause body, but you would not want to have to do that if there are lots of different types of clause macros, right? If we're going to have two different variations of the clause macro, one for attaching a directly fused in function body and one for passing a function name from somewhere else, we would definitely want to be in the kind of situation where this was the only type of clause macro we had in the first place, right? We wouldn't want to have also, like, we don't want a multiplier of 2 on the kinds of clause macros we need in addition to a different multiplier. You get one multiplier on the factorization of a concept. The rest has to decompose in a compositional way that doesn't require more combinations to be handwritten. So what even is this? This is a event together with a conditional state. So that one is another type, which is event and state. And the state is another set, a finite set here. Presumably, that means we could also have this. But I think another way we could see it is that there's a top level structure here, which is that anything that works as a valid clause header can work as a clause header and optionally have a state. So, in the interest of turning this into a Lego brick, I think the way you can see that working out is if I set event equal to tile event, then this becomes this, which when you factor it out the other way around can look like this. But this and this are actually the same, right? So to show you what I mean in a different way, if I'm setting these equal, what I'm getting at here is that you can have either an event or an event and a tile. Well, that's the same as saying you can have an event and maybe a tile. And so you end up with like this as a Lego brick. And then, of course, question marks aren't actually allowed in a Lego brick either unless there's a way to refer to a nil type, which there can be. In this case, I can just add a nil tile and a nil state. Now I want to look at the scoping. Because if I have an event called holder increment and holder, like, you know, we do holder tile inc, holder tile deck. Now this is saying we have a tile event type of event. So when you specify it, you will use a tile here because the events come with tiles other than the nil tile. And so to match them, you'll need to have a tile there. And um, and then the interesting thing is, what if I want a rule that says something about like an ally's tile changing? What if I have a rule that's like I am, the guardian, and when my ally's HP decrements, I want to do something hearts decrement. If an ally, right, has decrementing tile, so does that mean that for each scope, I define a different event handle? That might be the best way to do it. And so if a tile increments, you'll end up having to run each of these, right? Like a tile increments, and then you have to say, okay, find out who the holder of that tile is and run this on that entity. Now find out the set of allies, and for each ally, run this on the allies, and then look at across all entities and run this, right? Um, And of course, you'll only actually bother to iterate the tiles if you have a handler for one of these events to begin with, right? We are no longer going to have to probe, so we can just say, hey, do you have an event that, well, no, it works the other way around. What we'll have is we'll already have a tile somewhere saying, hey, I hook a tile anywhere of this type changing, right? When you hook this, you still have to say which tile you're watching. So if any heart tile anywhere increments, then XYZ happens. That gets put onto the board somewhere. And so then what has to happen is whenever a specific tile increments, we have to have a data structure that says, where are all of the things interested in this tile? And then check it, find some way to limit that to scope, right? So anyone who said this, we want to know about. Any allies who've said this, we want to find out about. And any if our holder, if the character who's getting this increment event has another tile that hooks it, we want to know about it. So it's kind of about looking it up across the other way. When I have a tile increment happening, I have 3 scopes, so I look at the any scope or the whole board scope and ask if there are any hooks for this tile there. The hooks for that tile come from tiles that say this, right? That's what puts things in that scope. Then I look at my ally scope, and things in my ally scope that have ally tile inc related to me will have shown up there. And so yeah, you just query 3 times on these 3 different scopes. So that can be 3 quick lookups. And if there is anything there, then you just run those with the correct parameters, of course. You have to set up a pointer to the tile that's been modified. And likely you want a pointer to the tile that is, you also need to figure out the tile that is responding, that is the one that hooked it, right? So the 2 parameters to these things must be the tile that is getting changed and the tile that is hooking the change when you call one of these events. And those can go through the register system that I've already got. They don't have to go through a special parameter system or anything. Now, I wonder if there are any other types of events that will come up, and I don't know off the top of my head if I've thought of everything. I don't see how I could figure out if I've thought of everything. But it's a good start. It's a good start. Okay. So to make progress in this, I think I'm just going to have to spend some time hammering out an idea of the clause for a tile script and then implementing them. So this tile script clause is going to get a little complicated. Why does the heart have move kinds, actually? Was that real? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I don't know what this is about, but this is some garbage. It's just... like this. Let's see him. What are we missing? Okay, so that makes a script clause. And what do I want to do in this first script clause that I've got? It's the gather moves. Gather moves. Allies, give each of them a tile wake up. That is good. Okay. That's you. Round begin. Do this logic. Holder damaged. That's going to get replaced with holder tile decrement on the heart tile. Looking good. Okay, here's how you do a wake up tile. The move kind flags needs to include move kind flag quick action. The max equals 1. The discarded 0 is 1. That's good. Tile script clause, wake up. This used, nil. Now the protect tile has a this used clause. Should look like that. And it has a holder resting clause. Okay, I should be able to unsilence things now, like these. Wake up brain here. Protect brain here. And that's building. Excellent. Now we go through the combat rules. This is still in the future. Although technically I'll bet you everything but this is building now. I'm wrong. Alright. So that much of it works. Rule script is fine. Rule script is fine. Rule script is fine. Combat KO check is fine. Okay, here we go. An attack tile. Should look like this. Tile script. In one, move kind flags. In one, target equals target single. So did any of these have moves? Wake up. It's ultimately going to be a target single. For now, this is when this is used, which does not come with a tile parameter, but which does want to be filtered down to the fight state. Right, this is some fantasy future version. So there's our attack tile, attack brain script. How are we looking? Tile script run. If you can run, then run. Alright, the sleep spores tile, when it gets used, nil in a fight context. And when this is held by someone who rests, we do this. Good. I don't actually use the fight context for anything anymore because I just decrement hearts directly with these things these days. So I think the fight context can go away. The chase context is still necessary, I think. Wait, no, it's not either. I don't think either of them are doing anything anymore. But they might come back. I'll just leave them off for now. All right, script clause, decompose. If this gets used in a fight context, Okay, now the brain script for the default is that decompose if enemies are all asleep. Okay, not surprised. And the sleep spores tile says, or brain script says, use sleep spores if you've got it. Okay. What are we crashing on? Okay, now we got to deal with the fact that running events on tiles has always been pretty different. And so this moment here is the first moment where it's all going to have to come apart. Let's just start decomposing code around that area until something clicks into place and reforms in a better pattern. Yeah, so you can't just say run a tile anymore. I need you to pass in everything. Run proto no longer makes sense. So this is going to now look like this. Tile run tile hook. Tile ID, event ID, event tile ID, event state ID. I think that's what I need. Let me think. So this one is getting replaced with RPG run tile hook. Where will these come from? So state can come from this. Right. I think this needs to get just passed down. Event codes are out. tile hook recursive. I mean, we can just do hard-coded mode. Maybe this is the kind of thing that'll simplify everything for me a lot better. So we scan all the tiles. We're applying an event on a character. Means, for now, that we're scanning all of the I'm not going to want to be running events on entities for very long here. I think this is an old school way of thinking about it when I didn't articulate the concept of scope that I was talking about earlier. But getting a full scope data structure put in is going to be new features, not cleanup. So I'm going to avoid building out that and continue to treat characters and parties as my scopes for now, even though it's actually going to be a little bit orthogonal. Okay. I think we can do this without tile probing now. If we want to. So we take out the probes. Wait. Okay. Huh. Okay, so it ran to the infinity without making progress. But that's not totally surprising. There's probably some stuff I forgot to hook up here about calling the clauses still. You know, maybe I didn't finish the can use logic is another thing that I was digging into. Can be used? Yeah, so it just doesn't think anything can be used. Okay. If this used to be a tile probe, so that means it was going in to see if the tile had a hook for the current situation. In particular, we're looking for this. Tile hook from clause IDs. Can it be used? Is like asking. Can this be used? You're out. Cool. Ah, not cool. Wait, these shouldn't all be like this. Okay, this isn't quite right. So that's fine, but these are not state IDs. These are event data pointers. Here's where you need to use nils. The event data got stuffed into the registers, which is good. Tile hook from clause IDs. There we go. So, trying to figure out if this can be used. Run proto. Yeah, you're out. Tile hook recursive doesn't exist. But this logic here is how we resolve how to run any hook can be used is more or less a check that there is some hook for the event ID of use, which does not come with a specific tile to use, but it can actually come with a state ID still, which we get from this character. I see the problem. I spelled nil with a capital L. infinite running is working. Cool. So 2 corresponds to attack. It's funny, nil ended up down here. How did that happen, huh? I definitely want to figure out some way to get these nil ones to work different so that they can actually be at value 0. Everything is built with the assumption that we can't control the order and that the first one is going to be indexed 1. I'm somehow going to have to rearrange things so that we can make the first one a specific one and that it's always a 0. The fact that the first one I declared isn't even the first one that came out is super interesting though, right? Like right here, I set it up so that a tile script declares and defines one of these tile protos. And so the one labeled nil comes out first. It's the first one ever possible in the compilation unit, and it goes last. Weird. Very strange. Heart ends up coming first. It's so unusual. Who knows? Who knows? we get to the end and we have some tiles that can be used. We put all the characters together into an array. Grant them all their moves. I assume this must be coming back empty. No, we made moves. We made attacks. We made 7 attacks. Okay. So it might be the change in the fight state stuff. Figure out the fight state. Start running moves here. Okay, so this guy does have the moves. We decrement 1 move from that tile. Event on the character proto goes like this. Event data is empty. Here's the party. Here's the character. We attempt to get the tile. Eventually we find a match and return it. So we've got a tile. We figure out our current state. It's a state of 5. We can always, oh, I don't actually have them written down in the context yet. They're just global variables. Event state ID, event tile ID, etc., etc. I'm gonna look in here. The key is 2505. Gonna take a look. Do we have anyone that looks like that? Hash, bucket, mask, bucket, index 199. Bucket is empty. Okay. By the way, does the map itself have anything in it? It has 14 spots. So the map bucket show me the 14 clauses that I have. Oops. 256. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and we got 1 birthday paradox. 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13. Yep. Oh, 13, 14. Okay, never mind. We got 14. Cool. So that makes sense. So we got nothing. We look again. We still got nothing. So tile ID probably shouldn't actually have been working out like that. So something super off. How many tile protos do I have? 13. Okay. Right, so 2 does indeed stand for the attack tile, which does have a this used event, if that's what 5 means, for the fight state, if that's what that means. So this first one really should not have been null. And now I wonder if I might see a little more if I looked at this. "14 clauses. And I see tile ID, event ID, event tile ID, and event state ID. Let me double check that I think I must be using the right macros here. Because they get type checked. Tile raw, event raw, tile raw, state raw. So all of that should absolutely be enough. And the hook is a function. So we pop in here. We look at our key and our hook. Set a breakpoint for right here. These both use the tile hooks map, so it should work out. Let's take a look. 6, 4, 10, 3. 6, 1, 10, 3. 6, 7, 3, 1, 3, 7, 5. 8, 2, 10, 3, 9, 7, 9, 2, 2, 5, 10, 5. Okay, I have a theory. Now we push a copy of the key. So we're not losing the memory for the key. That's not it. Yeah. Bucket index 13 has 2, 5, 10, 5. 5, 5, 10, 6, 5, 5, 10, 7, 12, 5, 10, 5, 12, 2, 10, 3, 13, 5, 10, 5. There we go. Event ID, event tile ID, event state ID, tile ID, state ID. Yeah, that's all good. So how can it be that we get this far? 2, 5, 10, 5. Shuffle and run the moves. Ooh, there's a mistake. 250. That event tile ID should be a nil. That's what I've been missing. 1022. There we go. That looks like the usual kind of outcome. About 4 HP left, but not always. Sometimes 3. Sometimes 1, apparently. But sometimes 4. I feel like they've been at a slight disadvantage now. Ah, because when this guy gets hit, he doesn't wake up. Look at that. We start fighting, we wake up this guy, we hit somebody, they hit me twice and this guy once, and he doesn't wake up. That's the rule, is he's supposed to wake up. But that's because tile hooking hasn't worked yet. We can't hook the increments on tiles successfully yet. Let's go get that part working. Okay, so that's it for increment. Let's do the same thing to decrement, and then maybe the waking up mechanic can work again. right, so everyone's awake. Look at that. This guy started off awake. He was our night watchman, I guess. And then every one of our party members got hit and woke up. And we hit them once. Then we hit them 3 times, and they hit us 3 times, and we lost one. The one of the sleepers didn't make it. And then we had a little bit of a mistake. Oh, no, we're good. So we lost one, and there's one guy left, and so then he has no chance. He doesn't hit the right guy to take anyone else out, and we're good to go. All right. That looks like it's working. So right now, the way these are all being implemented, we treat this handle and also the root of the context as a scope. And we say project across everything on that scope, go and look for handlers to this event. And we change the name of the event to indicate what scope we're scanning. So if someone has a holder tile decrement, but they're not in the right scope, we don't find them. Now, if I end up introducing a proper scoping mechanism, I might just save tile decrement and tile increment, and the scoping would then be used to say, as another element of the clause, when this event happens on a tile, we want to know, tile-related events want to know what scope they apply to. So if this event happens to a tile, and other things are hooking that event, happening to that particular kind of tile, then we want to know under what scoping condition. So does it only if I'm the holder, the ally, or the, anywhere on the board? Could also be scopes like the enemy or the environment only or something like that. Or to a specific character. It starts to get complicated. Like if I have a specific character tied to another character, like I have a hunter who's placed a hunter mark, you can imagine that that might want to hook what happens when that character tries to flee. Our hunter might get an advantage to chasing them or something, right? So there's ways I could imagine needing to be able to handle the scope in ways that are parameterized in runtime ways like that, and not just by relative relationships in the hierarchy. But, well, I suppose one piece of this puzzle at a time, right? But point is, this hooking system is working, but it's involving a lot of compute. If I want to invert it, what I'll have to do is whenever a tile gets added to the game, on any of the tile boards, a data structure will have to be kept with a scope for each character, a scope for each party, and a global scope. And that scope will have to contain basically an index or a dynamic list of all the places where an event is hooked at that scope. You know what I mean? Then when you go to do this, you'd say, hey, I want to look through on this, given this tile ID, look at these 3 scopes and run whatever they've got. But let's see, I think I've already been at it for 3 hours. It's almost the end of the day, huh? I think this is pretty good progress. I think I'm going to take a 5-minute break, and then I'll come back and see if there's any last-minute stuff or if I'm just going to wrap up. I'm not entirely sure which one I'll do, but I'm having a little hard time. I'm thinking it's going to be best to take a quick break and then think about this with a fresh head because I'm a little bit phased feeling. All right, so I'll be back in 5 minutes. Let's do a 5-minute break. All right. Let's see here. So switch to separate hooks for each clause. Remove all tile probing. That does appear to be done. Probe. Tile probe is removed. All of these events get used now. So I think one of the biggest to-dos now is to figure out some way to make nil equals 0. Okay. And then yeah, that's working too. I still don't have a plan for condition clauses. I also need a plan for yeah, Rust compiler, that's exactly it. It's never done. There's always more to do. It's just about 4 years ago I felt that I hadn't touched it in a year or more, and I know other people still wanted new stuff, and so I figured I'd just open source it and let the community take over because I had sort of already been retiring from my own interest in it. We're gonna try to do this, I think, before the day is done. Right? We're gonna try to go like this. Do eliminate the registry altogether. That'll be the last thing we do. That seems appropriate given how far we got. But there was one other thing about tile scripting I wanted to include in here. Well, there's a couple things. I want to do a tile board acceleration simulation tile state acceleration structure. And then I also want to do a tile hooking index or something like that with scopes. We were talking about that. That might not be something I need to do right away, but I think we could at least be sure to do tile board and the condition clauses during the cleanup week. Condition clauses also a little bit, I mean, these are both new features in a way. This is an acceleration feature. This is a feature. So they're not totally cleanup related. Neither is this. Neither is this. Neither is this. Okay, so for cleanup, I think eliminating the registry for now. Maybe tomorrow I can think about this, and I think the next big step of cleanup might be to do a naming pass over context.h. Like, I've been doing some cleanup of some truly offensive stuff like the maps today. But I think the next stage of cleanup is just going to be a matter of figuring out if all of these functions are real and if I like them still, and rearranging them for a bit. Okay. So, let's eliminate the registry for the rest of the day. I feel like I'm up for doing a bit more, and this is so close to being done that it's just like, come on, let's make it happen. So, brain states are coming in from the brain script underscore state. So we define brains by just giving them a name, and then we are hooking things onto them kind of like clauses, except brain scripts are gonna be more varied because a brain script ties in at different points. Some brain scripts are about answering what to do uh, given what state you're in, and that can include then looking at the brain scripts for a set of tiles. As a sub piece of that, there's sort of the brain is kind of matching the various hierarchical structures within the game with the states of the flow of the larger, the large states. What state your party's in? Are you fighting or fleeing? Whatever. What decision does the party want to make? That is one layer of decision, and then there's the tactical decisions of what moves to make in whatever state you're in, and that is determined by the tile brains, which contain like separate little logics of when it makes sense to play that move. And then there are other facets I might want to do, like introducing a partial order on the top brain script or tile scripts. Okay, so these are brains, and this is going to be brain scripts states. So I think what we do for something like this is we go, okay, for each brain and each state, there's a hook. Now, what was all this about? Why is it symbol, brain, state, so many layers deep? What's happening here? Symbol, brain, register, RPG symbol. I wanted to auto name. Okay, that shouldn't be a problem anymore. So what we are doing is we're making a struct. We're going to throw in some magic IDs. Brain tiles are now going to be brain states. Haha, Rust compiler. I don't have graphics attached to the simulator yet, but I did spend a couple days last week setting up a little tile set, a little free open source tile set viewer. Let me see if it'll run for us. It takes it a minute to run the first time because I haven't optimized the graphics, the bitmap asset file, so it's just scanning a giant folder full of PNGs right now, and there we go. So like, I can show you a little bit about what I did. So I got the pixel art anti-aliasing up and running on it, right? I can do various forms of scaling and spinning and whatever I want. My next goal, once I work on it again, is I'm actually thinking to set up a 3D camera and project this onto a sort of Paper Mario style character facing the camera, roughly facing the camera, right? Put it somewhere in 3D space with the assets. And then I can also show off cool stuff that so like here's all our minotaurs and here's all our dwarves and here's all our swords. So this is open art, so I can just use this to start playing with building an interface soon. But it's not quite attached to the simulation yet. Yeah, I could do movement. I'm for now not gonna spend any time. Like if I do build a graphical interface, I think I'm gonna tap out at a 3D camera with the characters and the ability to click on them or navigate through them with arrows and a couple of buttons. And I won't worry too much about an animation. Right, that'd be like if I was going even farther into making a full game. This is very much like right now in simulation land with the few steps coming together to make it into a prototype of a graphical, viewer to the simulation. So the most animation I'll probably do is just like move the guy towards the guy he's about to hit and move the weapon, or just do it a sound effect or something. But I'm gonna build the interface like it's a game, even though I'm not even. This part isn't even a game, right? It's still gonna be a simulator, but I'm gonna just build the interface like it's a game. Roughly speaking. Okay, so brain state, brain raw, state raw, hook, state enum, state ID, brain state script. So we don't need all that. We can simplify this down to brain state. We don't need anything else. Then you're gonna make a hook. This is gonna be a brain script, brain state. There's not gonna be a before main. What's gonna happen is we're gonna have this get defined here, and then we're gonna go rp id decal nameless rpg brain state enum equals open brace close brace, and then in here we've got the function pointer, and then we need to expand rpg brain raw brain rpg state raw state. And then what we need to do, that's going to give me my brain script state. I have to process them. RPG brain state enum. So we get our count from RPG brain state enum dot ID count. And we get the ID base putter on the same thing. And so this gives me an RPG brain states equals RPG brain state equals brain state plus 1. And then these simplify out, this simplifies out, these become brain state raw brain raw state raw brain ID state ID, and the hook comes right from the brain state directly. And there we go. That sets up all of the state hooks for the brains. Brain tiles and brain states are good to go. We can drop them down to the bottom where they more totally make sense. All right, everything's still working like before. Now, the last of the registry pieces is the rule. And I've said earlier today at the beginning of all this that if any of these is going to require a registry, it'll be this one. This might be the one that I'm not sure I can actually do using the magic ID system, but let's not rule it out yet. I'm just going to save this one here because it makes me nervous to delete it, given that it's a little tricky to replace. It's not that tricky to replace, it just feels trickier than the others for some reason. Okay. these are going to take up rule protos. We call this RL. Each rule proto needs a hook and an array of states. But it can't quite work that way because of the fact that I don't have IDs resolving in time. So we're going to go to raw states instead, which is what I did here too. And then what has to happen is somehow I have to be able to go RPG rule script ... And then I have to create a global var. Yeah, this thing needs a name. Okay, so this thing still needs a symbol that comes in from above. And this is going to be RPG rule script states boom boom symbol S0 square brackets VARGs. Okay, so that puts some global data in the normal data section. Then I go ID decal nameless RPG rule enum equals and I also need a function signature, like a hook here. So after I make the variable, I need to set up a hook. This is going to be rule script underscore underscore symbol, and there's going to be that there and there, and also the name of it there. And then the RPG rule script states symbol array needs to go there, and the array count of it needs to go next. So it goes the array, which it's in global memory, just being there ready to be used. The count, which we should be able to resolve statically, and the hook. You don't like something about that. Type def struct RPG rule proto. Rule enum. I redefined the wrong one. Rule enum. Make that go. That got eliminated today. Okay. And the reason I need that symbol to be passed through to make this work is because I need to be able to link a name from here to here and from here to here. And so I need two names, and I need them to be able to match across that distance, right? And I cannot use the arguments because before I've been able to just give everything a unique name by pasting all the arguments together because I had a finite number of arguments. I had a predetermined fixed number of arguments. Now that it's a variadic macro, the number of arguments isn't known. There's no way to make a concatenation of all this incoming stuff, and even if there was, I have to wrap them all in the raw macro anyways. The state raw has to get wrapped around them just to make it work. So instead, we're going to have to pass down a symbol name that we auto-generate like we were doing before. Rule script S0 symbol VARGs define rule script And it's like this. Interesting. So I probably wrote that down wrong. I said U64 here. When did I say U32? Ah, here. That should be a U64 for surezies. And now what we have to do is over here in sim new, instead of processing reg data, we are processing RPG rule enum. Which then involves going ID count, RPG rule enum, RPG rule proto, ID base putter, RPG rule enum, so that gets cleaned up. We're going to push a copy of the pattern. State enum rule proto raw states I. With the count coming from right there. Brilliant. Okay. So now I'm defining rules without the registry. And if I want to be totally sure that rules are working, I'm going to have to go make a modified version of the rule here. PRNG rule bounded. Context PRNG. Give me a number between 1 and 5. I'm going to turn everything but a 4. Sorry, between 0 and 4. I'm going to turn everything but a 4 into a fight, but one of them into a flee. I should be able to see a flee happen from time to time. Here we go. The first party is fleeing. The second party is chasing. They both generated 1 speed, and so a combat round continued anyway, and There you go. Yeah, that looks like they followed the rules. If both parties flee, then it just works. Fight. What can happen is, yeah, these guys can flee, and our friends here cannot give chase because some of them are asleep. So he wakes somebody up and runs, but nobody else in the party runs, and so the party's max min speed is 0, right? They all move as fast as their slowest member, and so the other party gets away, right? And that shows me that the state stuff is still working, so the rules don't need to go through the registry, which means nothing needs to go through the registry. The registry is out. Because now we don't register stuff at all through a registry. We just make global variable data tables and declare things into them, and then we process those at setup to build our simulation context. So there is no reg map. There's no reg data of any kind. All references to reg data are from the old simulator now. There. Okay, I think that's a good spot to stop for today. I've moved everything over to the cool new Magic ID system, cleaned up the gather so there's no gather system, cleaned up the registry so there's no registry system, and we just got everything running on this one really well tuned up Magic ID system. On top of that, I got the tile scripting moved over to this new system of separating the clauses out and building a data structure separately. And also we got the map data structures fixed up. So I think today was super crazy productive. Very happy with that. Tomorrow I'll be back to do more cleanup. I'm thinking I do want to solve this mystery about how to put a nil into the system properly so that the nil can be guaranteed to go in the 0 slot. That's important to find a good solution to. And I also need to make sure that before I do too much that I complete this condition clause problem, because there are some features that I want to have in the simulation that I don't have, that I still don't have from the original prototype. And I'm pretty sure they're no big deal, but this is one that is a big deal that I don't have yet. The other one that I don't have that's a big deal is inventory, but the reason I haven't recreated the item tiles that I used to have is because I'm not convinced that I had a solution for how to make that work with tiles alone, and that it might involve generating usable tiles from another data structure. So that would be a separate construction of a new subsystem, I think. But yeah, I think that tomorrow we'll probably be best off working on this, and working on this. And this tile board and tile hooking stuff is also stuff that'd be great to get to. This is actually done. So yeah, we're getting there. Awesome. I will be back tomorrow to do more of this. And until then, I'll see y'all around the internet. Goodbye.